How's it going, everyone? So we're going to continue along. This is our next part of the Highpoly. So we brought some stuff into Zbrush. We have it on this layer. As we go along, we're just sort of putting it there and hiding it away so we know what we've already brought in. We're just doing chunks at a time here, and we're going to add in a couple more parts, and then that'll do it for this main frame here. And then we'll go and I'll show you guys sort of how to keep your scene a little bit more organized and put parts of the mesh in different places so we're not rendering all of this at once. We're currently at 13 million polygons, and as you can see, it's starting to lag a little bit, so we don't want to sort of force too much into one scene at once. Another thing that's a bit more maybe relative if you're a little bit newer to this is the newer versions of ZBrush have folders, which you can just sort of organize everything in here, and I think you can turn them all off, and it might just be an easier way to organize this. But for now, I'm going to show you a workaround for those of you who don't have it. And yeah, we're just going to be adding in this and these front pieces, as well as this. And then we'll sort of open up a little other mini sub scene within our ZBrush file, and we'll continue along with everything keyboard related. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to do this guy first. This is a pretty interesting one because it's round with other round shapes cut into it. But more or less it should be the same as everything else we've done. Let's go ahead and open up our UV editor. And obviously this isn't the UV setup that we want. If we isolate this guy, let's check out our hard edges right now. So this is pretty much set up exactly how we want it to, where our hard edges, I can't talk right now, are kind of set up everywhere there's a cut that's affecting this actual cylinder, which is great. That means all we have to do is hit our hotkey that's going to break up our UVs based on that. And just as a recap, we'll sort of get all these different shell pieces. And this is going to tell ZBrush where to give us different polygroups. So let's go ahead and send that off. Go back to ZBrush. We can just append a random shape like the star, obj in. We got that guy in place. We can hit Shift F to see our wireframe and do an auto groups with UVs. So we've got everything split up nicely. Let's go ahead and dynamesh this guy, crank him up to about 700. Might not be enough. We could do somewhere around 1250. I just don't want these edges to be completely lost. When we start to smooth this with our polish by features, which is going to get rid of this sort of polygonal siding. I feel like this might not be enough geo, or maybe it's perfect. And it seems to work pretty well. Might just hit it with another one just to be safe, kind of lightly. And from here what we can do is we can hit, or just have group selected as we did in the last part, mask by features, grow mask, sharpen, grow mask, and now we just sort of have this mask around these very, very harsh areas. Control click outside of our object to invert our mask, and now if we do a polish, it should just very softly affect those edges. I want it to be pretty subtle. That's doing it pretty well. Should probably find a good reference of just how much is being affected. So it still definitely has hardness to it. I feel like that's too soft. So in that case, I'm going to hit Control Z a couple of times until the mask is a bit smaller and polish by 1. And it's going to just sort of force the edges to be confined a little bit more. And that should probably do it for that part. Yeah, all this seems good. That's slotting in there nicely. I do feel like there's a little bit of wobble here. So I kind of want to go back to when we dynameshed it and dynamesh it a little bit more. We can use the slider to sort of do our undos step by step. And then let's dynamesh this to about 1500. So just a little bit more than last time. Take a second to load. It might look like it's freezing, but Zbrush kind of does that pretty often. And then yeah, we can polish by features. And then I'm trying to think, we probably don't even need to mask at those areas specifically and just do a very subtle polish. Yeah, I'm still seeing that wobble there, so I'm going to just divide the geometry, delete the lower, just so when we do a polish by features, it's not going to affect things as much. We'll have to crank it up more. So let's just actually crank that to full. We're still going to get that wobble no matter what, so let's just mask this area. I'm going to grow it a few times, and then we'll just polish it out. Yeah, with a couple polishes, that sorts it out. A few polishes just to really average it out. Still got that sort of harsh cut in, so that's looking pretty good. And that's that piece. We are missing just this little bolt that's attached to it. I'm going to turn off the hard edge view, add this to the ZBrush layer just so I know what I've already got done. And let's just, let's send this bolt over. We can just go ahead and duplicate this, obj in to get the bolt. Seems to have not placed it correctly, so what I'm going to do is delete this. As I mentioned in the previous part, it'll happen from time to time, and I think it's because when you import things that aren't, or that don't have their transforms like frozen, or they don't have their history deleted, it'll sort of change the position where it is in ZBrush, and then when you import something on top of it, it'll go to that object's local position. So to sort of get around that, what you can do is just append just any object and import on top of that. And let's see. That doesn't seem to do it. Where is this exactly? Weird. What I want to do is go to my move tool and hit this button, which is going to center it on the object. And it says it's here. Maybe it's just pushed in. Yep. And it's that same thing as before that we saw in the first part, where it's thinking it's sort of inverted. We can fix that simply just by replacing the bolt. Not entirely sure why it does that. But regardless, it's a very, very quick fix. I'm literally just going to smart duplicate this guy as we've done in the past with other bolts and just replace it. So just snap that guy in there. Give him a different rotation. Make sure the orientation's actually correct. And if we freeze transforms, delete history on this guy, we should be able to send him off and import on top of that. Yep, and that one's working just fine. Yeah, I wonder if it's for like transform reasons or if something's inverted or why exactly it's happening. But either way, that's going to fix that. We can then just divide it, delete the lower division levels, and just give it a simple polish to even it out. And that should do it for that guy. So, right, that bolt was already a part of the ZBrush layer, so it's just gonna disappear. Should add this guy in there too. Oh, I suppose we have to add these caps as well. Yeah, let's save these front pieces to the end since we're already in the back. I'm going to combine these. Might as well bring them in together if they're serving the same purpose. So let's isolate them and check the hard edges. Pretty much everywhere we'd want to polish, which is great. So we can select the faces and do our auto sort of cut and pack. Send this guy off to ZBrush. Let's see if this works. I'm going to duplicate this one and hit OBJ in, and yep, so for some reason it worked this time. I guess just to be safe, just append it every time because it works. While the other one is like, there's a chance that it just might not be successful. So with this guy, auto groups, and same as before, we can just Dynamesh. Probably have to crank it up closer to something past 2K. And we really don't have to do too much polishing here. Like, we're mostly just trying to round out the center with a polish by features, and as you can see, that's going to make everything on the edges a little bit wonky. But if we just counter that with a normal soften or a normal polish, it'll fix all of that. The thing is, I want to keep it relatively hard edged. So even polishing by 1 is softening that up quite a bit. Polish crisp edges is a much better smoothing option, I think, for this. But either way, I'm going to give it some more geometry. And then in this case, I think we can just go with a normal polish at this point. Yep, liking how that's looking. Let's go ahead and send those guys to the ZBrush layer. And then we have the 2 end screws. Let's go ahead and put these guys together. The combined, freeze transforms, delete history, and send this off. It's going to be a lot of repetition until we get everything inside of ZBrush. There's going to be the occasional exception where some things are a little bit more challenging to do. That screw was turned off, weird. But yeah, let's duplicate so we can get some stuff in here. OBJ in. Yeah, these guys are imported correctly. Just like the rest of the screws we've been doing. I'm not going to bother Dynameshing it because the polygon distribution is already pretty good. So I don't need to worry about that. I'm just going to divide it. Delete the lower subdivision level and just polish it so it softens out. We'll be doing a pass on all of this later where we sort of add damage to everything. And when we do that, I'll probably end up just sort of speeding through the video, but it's important that we actually have all of these screws in here in the Highpoly so that we can do a proper, like, unique damage pass on everything. Because of course we could just add them in with Painter later on. But this way sort of ensures that we get the kind of maximum amount of detail and whatnot. I'm noticing that these screws are facing the same direction, but we can fix that when we bring it back into Maya. For now, we have to add our asset on the front. Put these guys in the ZBrush layer. So this thing should be a lot easier to find reference of this guy because he's on the front. So it's this sort of thing. Not entirely sure what the purpose of this is. And looking at this, I feel like we might have to round this out more. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm just going to select all of these edges and select all of these edges and hit Control B to bevel. Maybe 0.6 just to soften it out. With this guy, if we do an auto smooth on it, I have 40 degrees. We can check our hard edges. And yeah, that's pretty much exactly what we want. Wherever there's a 90 degree turn, it is, oh, I guess we moved it at some point. Yeah, but wherever there's a 90 degree turn, it is turning to a hard edge, and that's pretty much all we really want. Run this guy through our filter, ship him off to Zbrush. Once again, we can just sort of append a random shape with that shape selected, import on top of it. This one's pretty thin, it's pretty delicate, so I want to make sure we're kind of gentle with the polishing on it. It could probably mess up the shape pretty quickly, but regardless, we'll auto groups with UVs, and we're going to have to dynamesh it. It's a small piece, so I'm just going to assume we can crank it to 2500, and it's looking pretty good that way. Polish by features, just to round it all out. Polish by features isn't kind of like a be-all end-all, because it does sort of pinch and wobble some areas, which I'm not a super big fan of. But if we... Oh, I undid the... Did I undo the Dynamesh? I guess we'll have to do that again. Polish by features. What is going on here? I'm going to just import on top of that again. Something weird is going on. Re-auto groups. Re-dynamesh. Okay, now polish by features is working. I feel like I was doing something very, very wrong there. Weird, but a normal polish should sort out that wobbling. But even this is still a bit too... it was a bit too sort of polygonal. So I'm going to do it that way. And then just a very, very subtle polish just to get those smooth edges. And this is doing it. Like I said, like it's going to add a little bit of wobble in some areas. And that's why I'm kind of looking into different workflows in general. But this is doing a good job right now. That's essentially the shape we're going for. And this workflow is going to serve us pretty well for the rest of this tutorial. Let's grab this guy, send this to our layer. This one, I don't know if we're going to have any hard edges on this. I'm going to auto smooth it. Yeah, like this should be soft. And then the UVs should just be like this, where it's all one shell minus the end cap. So we can send that off, because we don't really need any targeted smoothing anywhere on this. Duplicate this guy to get something else in the scene. OBJ in. Auto groups, geometry, Dynamesh. Very, very much we're in a rhythm right now. Polish by features, so it's all sort of smoothed out, which is very, very nice. Then we're going to import these guys separately. We're going to want to do that so that each one of these guys can sort of soften on their own and sort of get this natural gap between the two of them. It is a bit tedious, I understand that, but it's just to sort of get this layered look pretty much. So let's just auto smooth, run through our script and send off. In Zbrush, we can do our standard import auto groups, Dynamesh, polish by features, and a standard polish. With a lot of these guys, setting up those setting up the hard edges isn't really that important. I'm just doing it because it only takes a second, and for some of these guys it might be needed, so I'd rather just have it off the get-go. So like with this one, for example, like I know we just don't need it because the other one didn't, so I'm just going to send it off. We can duplicate obj in auto groups. It's just going to be the one group, but like muscle memory at this point is kind of just making me do it. Interesting. So polish by features is just making it all round. I wonder if we actually absolutely have to do these hard edges. I'm just going to try this. So do our auto smooth and set up our UVs so that just the ring on the inside and the outside are different UV shells. If we send this out now and obj in, perhaps mask by or polish by features knows the UV groups and that's how it's polishing it. I'm not entirely sure. I just assumed it was based on polygon angle. Let me actually auto groups before I Dynamesh, and we can polish by features, and it's working. So with that, I'm just literally going to assume moving forward that the UV shells are a lot more essential than I initially anticipated. Okay, that's sticking in good. So we can send this guy off. Then we have these pieces. I'm treating these very much like I'm treating the keys, where it's like multi-layered. And in order to do so, I already have these separated. Weird. So I'm going to combine these guys, but just so that we sort of have like a gap where these are beveling around the edges and you can see them as a separate part, I'm going to actually shift right click extract these faces, so we have these guys and then these two are different, and we can combine them so we can then bring them in one at a time and smooth them so they have proper spacing and they look a little bit more realistic with their bevels. So let's go ahead and auto smooth and run our script. Send these off. Okay, let's get these guys in here. Auto groups and Dynamesh. Polish by features quite a bit, which shrinks it, but we'll be polishing the features of the other ones, so it should balance everything out. So let's just polish lightly. Yeah, and that's looking soft, just like the reference. So we can add those to the layer. And then these guys themselves, auto smooth, script, and send off. I'm like, I have my UV window on the other screen, so I'm like double checking these things. But most of these you can just auto auto smooth if it's just like shapes like this where it's very round or a hard 90-degree angle. Always do double check though, like not all these shapes are just going to automatically work because you hit auto smooth. I'm pretty confident some of these shapes are going to do it, as well as I'm double checking visually. OBJ in, auto groups, and if we polish by features, we can round this guy out and polish the edges. And this is pretty much kind of like summing up why we have everything in different groups altogether, or how we set up our meshes in the first place. It's just to get these tiny little bevels that look minute, but they really just sort of sell they really just sort of sell how everything's put together. Excuse me. So minor details, but minor details done everywhere make something a lot more believable. And I'm just checking the positioning on that. I suppose we could lower all these down, but we can also do that when we bring it back into Maya. To remind myself to do that though, what I'm going to be doing is to add that to the ZBrush layer. I'm just going to be grabbing all of these guys and lowering them here. Freeze transform sleeve history first. Weird, there's sliding. I'm wondering if, yeah, it's on component. Change that back to world. And we're good. I'm going to lower this just based on the reference a little bit more and move it over and just center it between the two bolts. The reference doesn't have it centered. It's more like this. But I'm going to move it here so that when I do import it back into Maya later on, I'll see like, oh, these aren't lined up properly, and I'll remember to line everything up. I'm also going to not freeze transformation, so I can just copy these numerical values to the Highpoly parts, and we can just snap them directly to where they're supposed to be. Yeah, right about here. Looks to be right. Okay, so that'll do it for the main sort of front and cage and shell of everything. Next, we're going to move on to everything that's being housed inside. So first, let's go ahead and save our file. Our file is probably going to get kind of beefy at this point. So let's save. We've officially got the first really big, large chunk of the Highpoly done, which is nice. And the way that I'm going to organize things is we have this tool, which is like tool 33. We can jump into other tools, right? We can jump into Polymesh 3D cylinder, etc., etc. But we can always jump back to this guy. And the cool thing is that say we're in this one, the option to get back to this guy is always there, but we can also just straight up append and bring him in this way by clicking this, just like how we were appending other shapes earlier. But we're not rendering all this geo right now because it's off screen. We can go ahead and just start working on another piece with only 14 polygons being rendered. And it's going to save your computer a lot of memory. So we can just sort of break these guys into chunks since everything's not physically attached. It's totally fine. And we can move on to the keyboard. And it's really nice because say you do want to double check how everything's looking, just go ahead and append it. Just append it all back together. It should be fine. But yeah, let's start with the keyboard. I'm going to start with all the keys. Just to keep everything easy, I'm going to be bringing in all the things that are very similar as one mesh. So all these inner keycaps, for example, they're all going to be given the same polish treatment. So I might as well just import them all at the same time. So just selecting them all. Very slow and tedious process, but not too much you can do about that. Move them aside, make sure it's just the keycaps. So we can go ahead and do a mesh combine on those. Then we have this part. I guess we can do those afterwards though. Let's start with this. These guys, we can check their hard edges. So definitely not perfect. Got rings all the way around. It's auto smooth. And yep, that's what we're going for. We can then do our script to get all these little rings here. And ship this guy off to Zbrush. We're in a new scene now. We're just going to replace this guy with our keycaps. So we can auto groups and Dynamesh. This is a lot more geo than it looks like. It's a very round shape, multiple of them. So let's see if this is enough geo actually. I'm going to hit it with a mask by features with the ring mode on. Yeah, we're getting that sort of sunken in domed look that we're getting, which is really, really nice. And then standard polish, just to soften out the edges. That's going to look really nice when we bake it down. I'm really happy with that. Let's go ahead and move to the next part of the keyboard. So we can put those in the ZBrush layer. Next part is all these sort of cups that are wrapped around the bottom. So I'm just going to go through and select all of these guys. If I remember correctly, there's close to like 45 of them, so we're going to have to just take our time with this. There's really no way to cheat it. And then we'll have to end up doing it one more time for the bottom green parts. But let's go ahead and isolate these guys, make sure got everything correct, and then just hit mesh combine. Exact same treatment as before. Auto smooth. Let's check our hard edges. Exactly where they're supposed to be on 90-degree angles. That's it. And then we can do our UV script. It's loading. And yeah, so this one's a little bit more crazy because we have all these little small pieces down here. Thank God we get to bake these down in our low poly. And we can send this off. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. OBJ in. Auto groups with UVs. And we're going to Dynamesh this. This is already a lot of points. So we're going to Dynamesh by the same amount. And this might feel like it's going to freeze or something. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of extra time. Yeah, we're at 1 million. So quite a bit, but these are multiple very round shapes, so that makes sense. We can polish by features and really round everything out. That looks really nice. It is pinching in this area, so I want to see if when we polish it, it's okay, which we can just go ahead and do right now. It's definitely too much of a polish. Let's just do 1. See what the minimum amount gives us. And that's, yeah, pretty much exactly what I'm going for. It's a little bit pinched, but also not not really. It's pretty much spot on for what I'm going for, actually. One thing I will say is, actually, no, from a distance it looked like the mesh that we just imported was cutting into the tops because of this harsh line, but no, it seems to be good. Okay, nice. Let's go back to Maya. Can add these to the ZBrush layer. And then we got these green parts, which is just going to be the bottom of everything. So we'll go through. I suppose we could do it from the side view. And then just control to deselect. Just like that. Yeah, I guess there's a faster way to do it. Isolate these to make sure we got it. We can do mesh combine. It's I know I keep saying this, but it's like I don't have a ton to talk about with this. It's just very, very similar techniques over and over again. We can hit it with an auto smooth. Check our hard edges, which all seem to be in order. Clean up mesh before using layout. Let's try that. Mesh, clean up, just non-manifold geometry, and clean up. So it's just cleaning up the edges pretty much. We can then do our auto smooth. Interesting. I want to undo that cleanup. Yeah, I'm going to undo that cleanup. I'm just doing some funky stuff. Even though when I laid this out, it says clean up your mesh. Everything in here is broken up into its proper shells. So I'm just going to hit it with a modify layout just to make sure nothing is overlapping. For some reason, Zbrush doesn't like it when you have too many shells overlapping and you're trying to break up your polygroups by UV shell. I'm not exactly sure why that is. It should still be able to tell where there's a UV seam and where there isn't, but perhaps when there's too many things stacking, or I don't know, maybe the similar parts on top of each other, it just sort of identifies them as the same. Either way, this is just going to take a second to load. And this is actually going to be more of a problem when we're doing our low poly than right now. Especially since it's such a, not complex, but sort of heavily duplicated piece of geo. At the very least, we can make one good one and then just replace all the other ones, which is really nice and comforting. But at the same time, if there was like one thing that I wouldn't want to have to clean up, it's anything to do with the keyboard, and at least this is one of the easier parts. It's not the legs or anything like that where it's like super hyper complex. Okay, this is just coming through. Let's just let it finish off. Okay, no wonder it took so long. Like, that's crazy. But it's done. We did it. We can now send this guy. Oh, really? It did seams for all of these. Interesting. Well, let's see if it works. I'm going to send it off to Zbrush anyways. Can duplicate that. OBJ in. Everything's lined up on the bottom. So auto groups with UVs. Yeah, that's looking a little funky, isn't it? But if we're lucky, it shouldn't really matter. We can dynamesh it once again. It's probably going to take a while because it's a very rounded shape. There we go. Let's see if this does it pretty smoothly. Okay. It is pinching in weird areas though, which I can only imagine is because the UVs are weird. I'm going to try different polishes to see if we can avoid it. Seems like a standard polish is doing a pretty good job of that. You can still kind of see the edges though, which I'm not liking. So let's return to our Maya scene. Let's just try merging everything. Merging the vertices, because I don't know why it would think this is non-manifold geo. Clean up the mesh before laying out. What is the problem here? Unless... Okay, this could be a problem. Okay. I could see that being a problem. So there were spaces on the inside where there wasn't supposed to be. Let's see if I try doing this now. Yeah, so it works on that one. So we're gonna have to essentially do that for everything, aren't we? So this one's good. Let's see, what's the quickest way to do this? I'm going to color this one a different color so we don't forget it. And then I'm just going to shift right click, extract face, center pivot, move that pivot to the top here, and then just duplicate this around like crazy and replace all of these. Just making sure they're directly on top. Just obviously hitting Control D to duplicate everything fast. I still think the larger keys we'll probably have to do manually because their dimensions are slightly different. That's those two rows. Okay, and then just the top row. It's weird how a small oversight like that can sort of put you behind. That must have meant that we messed up on the first one of these that we made, and that means the rest of them, since they were duplicated, all suffered the sort of same fate. So now we can just sort of select one of these end pieces and just purge all these guys here. But then yeah, we still have these four on the end, which I'm going to manually do because their dimensions are a little bit differently, as I mentioned. So hopefully if you're following with this didn't happen to you. Probably shouldn't have. Can't really think what would cause this unless I don't remember if I did a Boolean to do this and maybe it just wasn't cutting through all the way and instead it was like flush with the surface, because that would probably do it. Okay. And boom. Okay. We can combine all these guys again. Mesh combine. Merge the vertices. Check the hard edges. They should still be the same. Well, minus the bottom now. We should though be able to auto smooth it, and yep, takes care of that. And then we should be able to do the script, no problem. And sweet. Okay. Problem solved. I do want to change these all back to be green though. Doesn't really make a difference, but personal preference. Okay. Send these guys off to Zbrush again. And obj in. Auto groups with UVs. Dynamesh. Give it a second to render that out. And polish by feature should be looking a lot better now. Yeah, we're not getting any crazy pinching. Let's mask by features, grow, invert our mask, and just do a subtle polish. Do a polish of 1 again. It's looking a little too doughy for me. Let's not even mask it. Let's just do a polish of 1. Yeah, that's looking much, much better. Okay. Cool. We can send these guys off to the layer. And now we got these guys. So I still technically have these as 2 separate meshes. I'm going to keep it this way because where they intersect is completely hidden. The only way you'd see it is if you had your camera here, and there's just no way you'd see that. It's just going to help us keep the geometry a lot cleaner. So let's select all of these. We might run into some issues when we Dynamesh where these might sort of be too close and they decide to blob together into one shape. Let's see how that turns out though. To begin with, we might as well check our hard edges. These should be relatively set up correctly. If not, we can just do an auto smooth. Yeah, that's better. We just want the hard edges on the 90-degree angles. We get them here as well, which is fine. Get them here, which is good. Get them here, which is good. Okay. Let's go ahead and automate our UVs based on our hard edges. This might take a second because we're starting to get into crazy geometry territory. This keyboard is a curse. Let's send this off. And we can get this in here. Duplicate obj in. Alright, so that's slotting into most of these. Can check the bottom, fitting in very snug, which is great. Let's go ahead and auto groups, which is going to help with our polish. Dynamesh this, and hopefully it's enough geo. We'll see. It's going to take a second to load that. I guess the resolution is pretty high considering it's already at 2400 geo. So, okay, this is taking a little bit longer than I'm comfortable seeing, but I've seen it take longer, so I'm going to wait it out a little bit more. If nothing else, it's a wake-up call to save more often. At the very least, everything's properly set up in Maya, so getting it in here correctly is not an issue. That completely exploded. I'm going to hit Control Z, and we are going to save because that was very strange. I don't know what that was exactly. I'm assuming there just was too much geometry to handle. Let's Dynamesh at like 360 and see if it still explodes. Okay, no. So it must have just been too much geo. These are staying separated, which is very appreciated. Well, I think we're getting some weird stuff there. I think if we Dynamesh at a higher resolution, that should be totally fine though. Let's try 900. And keep my eye over here. Yeah, so that's almost 3 million, but at least everything stayed separate. And the polish for this is going to be incredibly subtle because this is already such a thin mesh. I'm scared to even do polish by features. Yeah, it's just wobbling everything up. If I crank it, yeah, that smooths it out. I'm scared to see how it affects everything over here though. Yeah, that's definitely not good. Also got a weird shape there. I don't know what that's about. I think for this what I would do is hold Control, go to mask rectangle, just mask this area when I do my polish by features. And then when I polish everything, it should just smooth it all out relatively evenly. If I do a polish of 1, polish crisp edges perhaps. Everything's a little bit too sensitive, isn't it? I'm gonna undo all of that. I don't like this. I'm gonna try and see if I can fix that in Maya first. Let's turn off this hard edge view. The hard edges are gonna be fine no matter what. I'm going to scale, changing my scale tool to component and flattening that. That should get rid of any strange triangulation. I think this side would be the same since we mirrored it. So that should effectively get rid of that. Let's try exporting that again. OBJ in. Yep, so it's gotten rid of that banding. You can see it there as well. Because we were really twisting these guys pretty crazily. It'll probably have it on the insides, but we'll never see that. In fact, it might be all the way throughout all of them, but once again, we won't be seeing any of those. And then I might as well keep the trend up and flatten these. These ones should be more or less fine though, because we literally did a whole pass on these to ensure nothing like that was happening several parts ago. Okay. OBJ in. That's all looking very flat, very nice. Auto groups. Let's go for a 1000 Dynamesh. Because yeah, we have to get that polish to be super subtle. So we'll see if we can achieve that. It's at almost 4 million, which is a crazy amount of geo. Let's mask out this area. Maybe on the point is a good spot to do it, because it's kind of... Is that where it's hidden? Yeah, so just in case there's anything weird. Okay, let's do our polish by features to round out this area. Just kidding, we want to invert the mask. It's doing the exact opposite of what we want it to do. I'm just trying to get a feel for how high I should crank this, because we're literally just targeting down here. And that seems to smooth it out. Since there's more geo, polish should be better now. So I'm going to hit it with a polish of 2. one polish. Yeah, like I just want this to be like technically high poly because it's beveled. That's pretty much it. Like that does it for me, honestly. These are all rounded. They're not as round as they should be. Let's just try polishing by features again. But this time I'm gonna even mask out these areas. I just want to target these and target them very intensely. So I mean they're softer. I don't know if they're softer in the right way. And then we could try our polish of 1. They look more like elbows than smooth transitions. Does polish crisp edges do anything? No. Definitely not. Maybe just a lighter polish by features. Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's kind of what I'm wanting. And then let's just try and polish everything with 1 again. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that for now. Of course, we can always change it later. So that's that big part out of the way. Let's get the corresponding ones done. Now, this is a really good example. Like these guys are very, very close. So I can almost guarantee if we were to bring this inside of ZBrush and we were to dynamesh it, it would just turn into one big blob. We really don't want that, so I'm going to bring it in 2 chunks and just separate every other one. And just sort of, yeah, make them into 2 meshes. And this way the spacing will be large enough that I can pretty much guarantee that the dynamesh isn't going to morph them together. So shift right click, extract faces. And then we have all these guys, which we can combine. Let's do them one at a time. Yeah, these are spaced out pretty well. We'll auto smooth and check these hard edges. Other than this is pretty much what I want it to be. Let's try a different one. I suppose we'd want it to be more than 40, not less than 40. I don't think that's going to be really an issue at all. Like I really don't. So I'm just going to run our script and send this over to ZBrush. Duplicate. OBJ in. This thing looks like something from a nightmare. Probably because it is. This thing is incredibly aggressive. Let's auto groups and dynamesh the same as the other ones so the resolution stays consistent. With this, we can polish by features a bunch. Interesting, so the polish by features is keeping that edge hard, because it is hard here. I really have underestimated polish by features. It really does give you a lot more control than I thought. Having hard edges and breaking shells in Maya really gives you a ton more control than I really thought it would. Let's go ahead and soften this. And I feel like this, yeah, is probably going to solve our issues. Run our script again to change our UVs. So it's smooth all the way through. This area is pretty chamfered, so I want to see if we are able to just soften it. Just soften it with polishing. I have my doubts about that, but we'll see about that. So yeah, let's just polish by features. I'm going to type in 100, 100, 100. And yeah, it's doing a pretty good job. This is still pointy here. I don't know if this was a... What do you know? It's a hard edge. Damn. Okay, so this is... I've been learning a lot about this. I didn't realize just how intense this is. It really does make a massive difference. Okay, run our UV script again. Can't tell if it did anything. Should be good if I turn on my... Well, I guess I just have to select two areas. Yeah, weird. It's not working. I'm going to just UV based on camera, so we get these UVs here. And then run our UV script. We're just going to force it to refresh, I suppose. And then this button here shows us our UV seams. We don't have any here anymore, which is good. Which means this guy should be good for Zbrush. OBJ in. Auto groups with UVs. Dynamesh. Do a couple smooth by features. That rounded that out very, very well, very easily. Perfect, yeah. And then we can just do a polish, probably just one, I'm guessing, and that might even be too much without dividing. Let's just check some high quality reference. Because they do have a softness to them, but I don't know if it's like that soft. Yeah, these are definitely smooth. I think that's passable. I might want to just divide it anyways and delete lower. The smooth did seem a little bit intense. Doing a smooth of 2. Smooth of 10. I just like the sharpness of it without it being too overly smoothed. Just increasing it subtly. Yeah, we're still getting that sort of sharpness, but it doesn't seem like it's going to cut you if you touch it. Which is nice. That's what I'm going for. So these ones are done. We can send those to the ZBrush layer. Oh, we forgot about this guy. I guess we can go back to him after this. So now we have this one, exact same treatment where we auto smooth it and we check the hard edges. If we've learned anything, it's that this whole loop here needs to be soft. So we'll soften those edges. We'll go back into face mode, run our UV script. Everything's in its weird funky shell, and we don't see any seams here, which is perfect. Send this off. And duplicate and import. So now it's full. And yeah, we'll give this guy the exact same treatment where we auto groups, geometry, we're going to use the same resolution. I'm going to turn off the other one just so I get a better idea when I polish by features how round this is. I think we did it, I think twice is more than enough. From there, we did divide it and then did a couple polishes. I'm just going to polish until it matches. I'm not even sure which ones I'm on right now. Okay, I'm just going to be looking at that guy. Yeah, they're all the same. One thing I did learn is if you hit these paint brushes, everything will become bright. They're going to be using the poly paint. So I can compare these guys directly beside each other. But that's looking good. Yeah, we do have that sort of seam between it, but as we mentioned earlier, we're never going to actually see that. This is also probably a pretty good time to save. So File, Save As, and save. Same with our Maya file. Okay, and add that to the ZBrush layer. Guess we can get these legs into place. Or I guess we agreed to do this one next, didn't we? So in order to do that, we're just going to jump back into our other mini scene by clicking over here. Probably take a second to load. And we can just, yeah, continue as we would. With this guy, an auto smooth should be pretty straightforward. The hard edges should just be, yeah, where you'd expect them to be. Let's find a reference of this again. Yeah, it is all just one piece, so that's pretty straightforward. We'll send that off. We'll duplicate and OBJ in. Auto groups with UVs, geometry, Dynamesh, and then polish by features should just, yeah, literally take care of everything. I am going to do a normal polish to sort of smoothen out that hard seam though. Perfect. Slotting into there very nicely. Okay. And let's continue in our other scene. Okay, I'm noticing we're missing a screw here, which probably happened when I moved this stuff around. I'm just going to duplicate this over. Very, very minor detail, but would have to be done sooner or later. Yeah, let's get these legs. I guess we can do this part next. We'll get all the yellow stuff. Maybe not this stuff, but anything to do with the typing pretty much done right now. Honestly, I think we can attach a lot of this stuff. There was a Windows update recently, and it's not liking that I'm pressing Alt a lot. I think it wants me to be changing languages. But yeah, we can grab these. Or maybe not, because I can't remember if this is actually like physically blended together. We should have a lot of reference of the back of this guy somewhere. Or we collected a lot of reference for that area specifically not too long ago. It looks like it's more attached to this. In fact, it looks like it might even be like attached on both sides. Kind of like so. And then it's like welded around. Okay, that makes more sense. I'm going to mesh combine these two. Just bring these guys out a little bit. I'm going to just cut this and delete these faces. We can then change our scale tool back to world. Flatten these guys out. Can extrude this like so, just to get a box. We're gonna fill each hole. Delete the openings and just bridge these guys across. Just have it hugging it like so. Okay, that should do it. In that case, I kind of want to pull it in a little bit. But that means we can't, actually we can do all these at once minus this one. This is one piece, eh? Wild. Okay, that's weird. Either way, I guess I set it up that way. Let's grab these pieces. Fill the holes, because well, Zbrush will do it automatically for us, but we'd rather have it not be guessing how we want it to be done, even though that one's pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and combine these guys. Off camera, I did have to raise this a little bit because it was cutting through a part under the typewriter, just a heads up, but all I literally did was add an edge and lift it up a little bit, so nothing that you guys can't handle. Let's hit it with an auto smooth and check out the hard edges. Right there. I'm going to want this to be smooth. Learned my mistake from the last one. All this looks good. This one will be the same. That can stay hard. This should be smoothed out, as should this, and this. In fact, I should probably just bevel them. It's pretty low poly looking, isn't it? Yeah, just beveling it will probably do the trick. These are all one mesh now, right? Yep. Thinking if I should just bevel that, but should be fine, but just in case, it's no harm in ensuring a smoother transition. Fill these openings. Okay, should be good to run our script. Give us some wacky snakes and ladders UVs. And okay, yeah, these are closed off already. Let's go ahead and send this off. Can duplicate that last tool. OBJ in. Excuse me. Auto groups. Geometry. Dynamesh. I'm a little hesitant to see how this turns out. Didn't really add any attention to this area. So I'm mostly keeping my eyes over here while we do a polish by features. Yeah, so it's shrinking this quite a bit. Same with up here. So I'm going to manually round out some of these edges, because like this, for example, it's doing what it's supposed to, even in this area. But here, I'm assuming that's a hard edge, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was other hard edges hidden in there. Soften. Just turn off our hard edge view. And I'm just going to straight up bevel all of these. Just soften it out. And bevel this guy as well. This stuff should be fine. We might just have to increase the resolution. That's about it. But let's go ahead and run our script on this again. Shoot this guy over to Zbrush. Saving project, so it's taking a second to open. I suppose it's a good thing it does that behind the scenes, but it scares me sometimes. OBJ in. So yeah, it's even smoother than how it was when we were polishing it. Auto groups. Just Dynamesh it at about 1400. It's probably all the extra geometry we need. Scary because these holes down here are so close to the borders, but nevertheless we can try and do a polish by features. It's doing pretty good everywhere. If we do a normal polish, how does that affect it? It's still polygonal. So I think I'm just going to have to manually soften out some areas, which is okay. These areas were pretty problematic. I can just bevel it, crank it down, and yeah, make it look intentional. Same with here. And then of course it's not going to be like that in the low poly, but it'll have to do for now. I should have made these holes smaller, but at this point, I still think this is a faster way to fix it. But yeah, let's run our hard edge script on everything. If I'm not mistaken, shouldn't make any hard edges by beveling, so that's good. OBJ in. I think it actually helped us by having a lower res Dynamesh, so I'm going to go back to about 1250. Oh, I have to auto groups first. Polish by features. Yeah, everything's rounded out pretty good. Even these sort of areas where they're straight, they look at the very least intentional. I guess I could just mask out these areas too. Just doing it with everything else, so I might as well. And then go to town without worrying about breaking anything. Just typing in 100 a bunch of times. Can then invert the mask, like before, control clicking off, and then just doing this at like 3 is pretty much all we need. Get rid of the mask and do a universal polish. This is looking kind of egg-shaped. Was it always like that? Kind of, more or less. I'm trying to remember what this was actually used for. Yeah, that's fine the way it is there. If it's really bad, I can fix it when we bring it back into Maya later on. Let's add this to the hidden layer. Not really too much left. Let's do these guys. That's a quick and easy one. We shouldn't have to separate it, which is nice. But auto smooth, hard edges, no hard edges at all. So very, very easy to work with. Just running our script and sending it off. Subtool, duplicate, and OBJ in. Auto groups, geometry, Dynamesh. Give it a second. And yeah, we've definitely been recording for quite a bit this part, eh? Like I said, at the end of the last part, I kind of want these ones where we're just doing a bunch of mindless work to be a little bit longer, because I don't think you really need multiple parts to explain what I'm doing here. With this, I'm not even going to bother polishing my features. We don't need it. I'm just going to polish. That might be too soft. Just do 10 off the bat. That's fine just the way it is. Got a ton of geo in here. We're pretty much rivaling the other scene, but as you can imagine, if we had all of this in with the other scene at the same time, it would probably be exploding. Let's see. Let's go ahead and save this. We still have one more of these guys to do. Let's do that, and the space bar, maybe some of these horizontal legs, who knows. But yeah, there's really not a ton left. I mean, I guess there's this stuff. It's definitely a lot more than I'd think, but at least everything here is mirrored, so I'll be doing them simultaneously. Let's get this guy in, along with all these parts. I guess we could have just attached this to the other one, couldn't we? Yeah, he would have been perfect to go along with the last batch. We'll fill hole on this though, and we will auto smooth. Check for those hard edges. They are exactly where they're supposed to be, but we know that we need to soften everything out here. Just beveling it all. That'll probably do it for this one. Hard edges are all good, and just run that script. Get them into Zbrush super quick. Duplicate that guy just so we have something to import with. That's going to go right into the final keyboard piece, which is really nice. But yeah, let's just get this auto groups going on. Dynamesh it with the same resolution as the last one. And polish by features. Shouldn't really have to do too much with it. Just one seems to be smoothing everything out nicely. And I'm going to turn everything off but this previous one, so I have a better direct comparison. I'm going to undo the polish by features, turn it up again, and just do a standard polish to mimic. That's looking the same pretty much, maybe a bit more actually. Yeah, we can turn it all back on. Looking good, looking clean. Add him to the infamous ZBrush layer. I say we could probably get this stuff done and called apart, and then we'll do the rest of it. And then the next part, we should be able to do the rest of it in the next part, and then we'd call it for sort of getting everything into ZBrush. Then we can do a damage pass, bring it all back, and our Highpoly will be done. Very, very fast once we set everything up in Maya. That's why I like this workflow. Let's get the spacebar in here. Suppose we have this welded to it, and these ones are separate. So let's go ahead and grab this. Let's auto smooth it, see what that gives us with the hard edges. Exactly what we want. Hit it with the auto pass. Export that. This guy's starting to chug now. We're getting quite a lot of polys in here. Duplicate. OBJ in. Go ahead and auto groups. I sound like a broken record. Dynamesh. This is really thin. I'm going to keep my eyes on these guys. They're dangerously thin. In fact, so thin, I'm going to mask them out while I polish by features up here. Then I'm going to invert. Do it down there. A lot more subtle. Then we should be able to do a universal polish. Maybe not. Let's Let's get a better look at how polished this spacebar is to begin with. It's pretty smooth. I'm going to try my best to just select this stuff and polish it a lot. Okay, maybe 80 is a bit much. Maybe not. It's looking pretty good. I can invert this, polish it a little, and then just sort of do some polishes with both of them selected so that where the mask separated the polishes, it can even out a little bit. Okay, we can move that aside. Okay, I think this guy had some bolts to go with it, right? Yep. Interesting. So they're upside down. Oh wait, no, they're upside down here intentionally. Never mind. I thought this is why the other ones we found were upside down randomly. No, we want this. So mesh combine. It might also just be because they're open and it sometimes inverts it. I think that's potentially why. So if we close this, we shouldn't run into that problem anymore. But let's send these guys off. Subtool, duplicate, obj in. Same sort of thing for these guys as the rest of them. Just sort of smooth it out twice since they're a bit bigger. And just polish. That does it for that. Forgot to add this guy to the other layer. These two are the same, so we're going to combine them and bring them in together. They're going to get the exact same treatment. So auto smooth, check our hard edges. I think it would just be easiest to soften all those minus these guys. So soft all the way around. But obviously we need these to be hard because they're part of the 90-degree angle. Run that script. Send them off. Duplicate. Okay, get him in here. Auto groups, and this is just going to be a very subtle polish once we dynamesh. Polish by features with only like one, and then polish with one. It's kind of getting the shape I want. I think I need more geo to keep it harder edged. So let's try that again. Polish by features on one. Standard polish. I think we need to polish by features at more. Let's do 5. Polish at 5. Yeah, we're still getting that kind of chamfered edge. Let's just crank that to like 25. $15. Yeah, that's going to do it. And then, of course, the matching bolts. These guys, of course, can just be one. Very, very easy. I am going to seal these guys up from now on, though, just to avoid Zbrush thinking they're the wrong way. So just fill hole. And we'll bring those guys in. Divide them like before, delete lower, give them a polish. Okay. We're getting very samey with a lot of this stuff now, eh? That just leaves these poles and their little attachment pieces. Some of them we can probably bring in together. What is this one for? Oh, I know what these are for. This is for the part of the original little scene we had going on. We should take care of these right now. I'm gonna fill the holes on these. And we will send that off. Add that to the ZBrush layer. So where these guys go, and I'm going to save our scene before we do anything. These guys go back into our original little viewport. So I click that, it's going to take a second to load. And they sort of go down here. Excuse me. OBJ in. Yeah, they're just going in there. They look really nice, actually. I'm happy with how that turns out. And with these guys, literally just going to divide, delete lower, polish. That's it. And yep, we can go back to our other scene, which is this one. It's hard to tell because the preview image is the most recent subtool, and it's just these tiny, these tiny little bolts. So, okay, let's go back to Maya. We can probably combine all three of these, because they all have pretty similar things going on with these like additional pieces. Just saves us the import time. Auto smooth. Check the hard edges. Yeah, with cylinders like this, it's pretty much exactly what you'd expect. The only difference is I'd like these two to be hard edges as well. But yeah, other than that, let's just run our little script on that. Send them off. These guys have little attachment pieces. Our first spring is here as well. It should be interesting to see how that turns out. Either way, send this to the ZBrush layer. Duplicate those screws. OBJ in. Honestly, we don't need to be rendering everything at once, so I'm just going to shift click the eyeball to turn everything off, and then whatever subtool you have selected will show in the viewport. And now it's going to be running a lot smoother. Auto groups with UVs. Geometry. Dynamesh. It's going to take a second. I guess with rounded shapes, obviously it takes longer, just like with the keys. This is, I guess somehow I got this to over 1,000 polygons. Probably because of all the subdivisions, but it's going to just take a second, I suppose. Hopefully it just didn't completely crash. We did save earlier recently though, so it wouldn't be wouldn't really be the worst thing in the world. But ideally not. I'd like to save as much time as possible with this stuff. Okay, nice. Let's actually just save right now. I'm just going to name this one 2 just in case anything corrupts. Okay. Okay. Let's do our polish by features. I'm actually going to divide this, delete lower, crank the polish by features. This looks a little janky. These back ones I'm expecting. Oh no, they're looking a lot better actually. Yep, it's just that front one because it's a bit more of an intricate shape. But I honestly think if we polish it, we'll get the general feel of it. I suppose actually we should just mask out entire pipes and do them one at a time. The one in the middle is literally just a tube, so polish by features is easy on that. And then just polish for the ends. Get the tips kind of nice. The end, second easiest one. We can polish by features and then standard polish, just be a bit more weary of everything. Maybe I'll actually mask by features, grow mask, sharpen, grow, invert, but remember to actually mask these guys out. We're just targeting these little edges here and polish them specifically how we want. I'm going to undo all of that. Say we have these guys masked. That should be fine. I'm mostly just concerned about how this blends in, but it honestly looks intentional. So I'm going to go with it. So the only one we have left is the far right. So I want to crank polish by features. It's going to give us this wonky. Doing it once is almost alright, and then let's see if I can polish it to a respectable state. I really like actually how that looks. If I polish it, it's nice and smooth. If I can get the other end to look somewhat like that, I can't just smooth it obviously. I suppose that's alright because it's such a tiny detail, and when we honestly when we bake it down it's gonna pretty much look like that. So I'm gonna say that's fine. Because if I recall, if we go back to Maya, That wiggly area is just here, so you can just barely see it. But no, it wouldn't be right to kind of half-ass it at this point. Let's go ahead and delete those edges. Delete that. Delete those edges. Delete that. It seems to just like much larger shapes in general. So if we do that, should be fine. Yeah, we'll have to redo the other stuff, but it's not like it took very long to begin with. So let's send that out. Auto saving. Okay, OPJ in. Shift F, auto groups. Dynamesh, this one took a while, but it's less edges, so technically shouldn't be as bad. Will still probably take a bit. Okay. Let's just try and polish by features. We did divide actually. So let's do these two at the same time. Polish by features, and then just polish. I'm mostly looking at this one. The other one's pretty simple. You can invert the mask, polish by features, and polish. Yep, okay, that shape's looking a lot cleaner. That one was already looking good. Okay. Cool. That leaves the spring. Spring is all going to be one poly group, should be. So I'm going to send that off. Duplicate that and bring it in. Got to turn the eyeball on the other one just to make sure we're getting the placement for all this right. So yeah, I had a feeling dynameshing was just going to do something crazy like that. So let's just divide and smooth. Delete lower. That's pretty much all we have to do for this. And then we can try and hit it with a polish. The reason Dynamesh isn't going to work is because it's going to automatically sort of goop in those parts. Dividing is just going to make it smoother if we have smooth turned on, so that works us wonders. We can add that to the layer, and then it's just these guys left for this part. Oh, I suppose we have this actually. Yeah, let's do this right now. This is a interesting shape. Auto smooth should be pretty reliable on this one. Yeah. Okay. Did our UV trick and we can send it out. Duplicate, bring it in. So that's why that one was straight. That makes sense. That is completely inverted. Why is it inverted? I can't think of why it'd be inverted. I'm just gonna try freezing transform delete history and sending it out again. If I invert the mesh here and send it out, will it fix it? Okay, I guess so. And then I'll just invert this back for later when we deal with it for real in the low poly. Very, very strange. Auto groups. Dynamesh. We're gonna have to crank this Dynamesh up quite a bit and polish by features. I love that. Circular booleans like this look so nice with the polish by features. And then we'll just divide and smooth to get some more geo in here. And just hit the edges with like a standard polish. All these guys we're going to import at the same time. So let's add that to that layer. Mesh combine. Fill hole. And export. Duplicate that guy and import. Auto groups, geometry, divide and smooth, delete to lower, and polish should do the trick. Okay, we're just speeding through these. It should just be 2 more imports. These 2 are already combined, which is perfect. I'm wondering how good this is going to translate. But we are going to have to be very gentle with how thin it is, so maybe it will. I'm just hitting it with an auto smooth. Checking the hard edges, which are all as they should be. It says we have non-manifold geo. So, like before, we can just do our layout. These layouts surprisingly take a lot longer than I thought, which is interesting because when we get to the end, I typically do layouts where it like does it like 10 or 15 times like a batch layout and then chooses the most optimized one. So with all these parts, that will probably kill a solid chunk of time. That's nice. But we'll be able to speed through that with the power of editing. Duplicate, obj in, auto group. Okay, let's see how this goes. Dynamesh, I have it pretty high. Okay, so mask by features is doing pretty good. It's pretty solid. I just kind of want to soften that a little bit more. Super nitpicky, I know. So I'm just going to select that loop on both of these and hit Control B. Send it out again. OBJ in, auto groups, Dynamesh, polish by features, and just polish normal. Looking clean. We should be able to do all of this in the next part, right? Like this, we've been recording for pretty much 2 hours, Jesus. And we got quite a lot done in those 2 hours, so I feel like we should pretty easily be able to get the other parts done in the next section. Fill a hole, just exactly what we've been doing with all the other screws. Send out, duplicate, and OBJ in. geometry, divide, divide, delete lower, and just polish it up. And that should do it for this part. We finished up the frame, but then actually I'm going to save before I do this. I want to show everything at once, kind of like as the ending. But we got the frame done, and then we got most of the keyboard related stuff done as well. Just all that remains is kind of like the top area. Let's see if we can load this all at once. It's only 13 million, so. Okay, we did it. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed and learned something. And I'll catch you in the next part where we finish off polishing the mid-poly parts. And then after that, we can do a nice damage pass, decimate this guy, and the high poly is done. We'll have that all done in no time. Honestly, possibly 3 more parts. Next part to finish the polishing, a part to do a damage pass, and a part to decimate it all and bring it back into Maya. All right, guys, sounds good. I'll see you in the next part.